What happens when Hollywood royalty collides with royal controversial on television? Today, we're breaking down one of the most unforgettable moments in daytime TV history, when Angelina Jolie, poised and unshakable, dismantled Meghan Markle's carefully prepared narrative with nothing more than grace, authenticity, and quiet strength by the end. One woman left the stage with the audience on their feet. The other was left scrambling for words. The View studio was electric. You could feel it in the applause, in the nervous energy on the panel as the theme music faded. Whoopi Goldberg, steady as ever, sat center stage, flanked by Joy Behar, Sarah N., Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny Hostin. Something big was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Whoopi began, her voice carrying that signature authority. Please welcome actress, director, humanitarian Angelina Jolie. The audience roared. Angelina stepped out with her trademark elegance, understated yet commanding. A warm smile, a small wave. Then she settled gracefully into her seat. The room shifted calmer, somehow, yet charged with respect. And our second guest, Whoopi, continued, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. Meghan appeared from backstage, her smile wide, her look impeccable, every strand of hair in place. Her outfit carefully calibrated for maximum impact. But behind the polish, her eyes betrayed something sharper: ambition, expectation, an agenda. The contrast was immediate. Angelina, relaxed, present, grounded. Meghan, poised, but almost performing stillness itself. Joy Behar jumped in with her trademark enthusiasm. Angelina, you're here to promote your new film on refugee advocacy. And Meghan, your upcoming Netflix docuseries. Two very different projects, but both about social impact. Thank you for having me, Angelina said warmly. This film is deeply personal. I've spent years with refugees, listening to their stories of loss, resilience, and courage. This project is about amplifying their voices. Sarah N. leaned in, visibly moved. Your work with the UN has been extraordinary. They've taught me more about courage than any role I've ever played. Angelina replied softly. The audience hung on her words. Then Meghan leaned forward, eager to reclaim space. I completely understand that passion for humanitarian work, she said smoothly. My own journey has opened my eyes to injustice, mental health, women's empowerment. What people don't see is how isolating it can feel when you're trying to make change while being constantly criticized. The panel exchanged discreet glances. Even in Angelina's moment, Meghan had steered the conversation back to herself. Sunny Hostin tried to balance the stage. Both of your platforms have brought attention to important causes. Meghan, can you tell us about your series? It's about authenticity, Meghan said, her tone deliberate. It's about breaking free from institutions that silence you, especially for women of color. That feeling of being trapped, smiled at publicly, undermined privately. That's the reality we're confronting. The air shifted. Everyone knew what institution she meant. This wasn't just promotion, it was a veiled attack. Alyssa Farah Griffin seized the opening. Angelina, in your work, have you faced similar institutional challenges? Angelina's response was calm, measured. I've found that when you truly commit to a cause, the focus has to remain on the work, not the obstacles. Refugees don't have the luxury of institutional support. They create their own networks of resilience. That's where the real strength lies. The words landed like a stone dropped in water. Subtle, sharp. A quiet distinction between selfless service and self-centered struggle. Meghan's smile tightened. Of course, but I think it's important to acknowledge that some of us are fighting battles on multiple fronts. When your character is constantly being assassinated in the press while you're trying to do good, takes a toll. For the first time, the audience didn't clap. The silence said more than any applause could. Asterisk character assassination. That's a strong phrase, Joy Behar cut in, her journalistic instincts kicking to life. Are you pointing to something specific? I'm talking about a pattern, Meghan replied, her voice sliding into the practiced cadence of her high-profile interviews. A systematic effort to undermine me that goes well beyond normal press scrutiny. When you're trying to modernize ancient institutions while confronting racial bias, the backlash can be overwhelming. The studio was silent now. You could feel the air thickening with anticipation. This wasn't a casual talk show chat anymore. It was building toward something. Combustible, Whoopi, sensing the shift, attempted a redirection. Let's circle back to the projects. Angelina, your film premieres next month. Yes, Angelina answered smoothly. And I hope it inspires communities to support refugee resettlement. Real change begins at the grassroots level. When everyday people choose to get involved. Again, the contrast was glaring. Her words were simple, grounded, and action-oriented. A quiet reminder that service speaks louder than self-pity. Meghan shifted in her chair. The frustration was visible. Now, her usual narrative centering her struggles to elicit sympathy wasn't landing. Not here, not against Angelina's unshakable presence. You know, Meghan began, her tone sharpening. It's easy to talk about grassroots change when you haven't had to deal with institutional racism and systematic silencing. Not everyone has enjoyed the privilege of being universally adored by the media. The jab was unmistakable. Directed at Angelina, the room froze. Angelina didn't flinch. Her expression stayed serene, but her eyes had hardened. I'm sorry, she said evenly. Are you suggesting my humanitarian work has been easy because of media coverage? I'm suggesting some of us have had to fight harder to be heard. Meghan doubled down. When you're up against palace sources briefing against you, tabloids twisting your every word, and family members refusing to defend you, it's a different kind of battle. Sarah End shifted uneasily. Meghan, those are serious. Claims about your time in the royal family, they're not claims. Meghan cut her off. They're facts. And people need to understand the difference between choosing a humanitarian cause and being silenced when trying to speak up about mental health, racism, and basic human dignity. The implication was clear. Angelina's decades of field work somehow mattered less because she hadn't faced Meghan's brand of adversity. Whoopi leaned forward, ready to de-escalate. Ladies, let's, but Angelina raised a hand gently. It's all right, Whoopi. This is worth addressing. She turned directly to Meghan, her tone calm but edged with steel. For 20 years, I've worked in refugee camps, war zones, places leveled by disaster. I've held dying children. I've sat with mothers who lost entire families overnight. I've been threatened. I've been criticized. I've been called everything from a homewrecker to a publicity seeker. Studio had gone dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to draw closer, but never once. She continued, have I made my personal struggles the centerpiece when speaking about the suffering of others? The refugees I work with don't have Netflix deals to share their truth. They don't have titles or global platforms. They have nothing but their resilience and the hope that someone, somewhere, will care enough to help them rebuild. Meghan's face paled. This wasn't the response she'd prepared for. I think you're misunderstanding, she stammered. I'm not saying your work isn't important. I'm just saying different people face different barriers. Barriers, Angelina repeated, her voice steady but cutting. You mean the barrier of being born in a war zone? Watching your village burn to the ground? Walking hundreds of miles with children to reach a refugee camp, where, if you're lucky, you get one meal a day, the studio gasped. Even Joy Behar, usually quick with a quip, was speechless. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a lesson in perspective. That's not what I meant, Meghan protested, her voice now defensive. Obviously, those situations are tragic. But I'm talking about institutional racism, about being gaslit, about isolation. You were isolated, Angelina said quietly, her calm more devastating than anger. In a palace, with staff in the hundreds, with the best healthcare, education, and resources at your fingertips. With a global platform most humanitarians could only dream of. Sunny Hostin jumped in, trying to soften the blow. I think what Meghan is saying is that privilege doesn't erase personal challenges, especially when race and family dynamics are involved. Of course, Angelina nodded. No one denies that. But there's a difference between real vulnerability and curated victimhood. And the people I advocate for, the ones who have lost everything, deserve for their suffering, not to be overshadowed by ours. Those challenges are real, and they matter, Angelina said evenly. But when you're on national television discussing humanitarian work, maybe the focus should be on the people who need help, not on how difficult it's been for you to help them. The words landed like a thunderclap. Meghan's jaw slackened. I can't believe you just said that. You have no idea what I've endured. You don't know what it's like to have an entire institution turn against you, to have your own family fueling smear campaigns, to be pushed so far you consider ending your life. You're right, Angelina replied instantly, her tone calm but resolute. I don't know that pain, but I do know what it's like to hold a starving baby whose mother can't produce milk because she hasn't eaten in days. I know what it's like to sit with teenage girls sold into trafficking. I know what it's like to work with genocide survivors who still wake up screaming every night. The simplicity of the comparison cut through the studio like a blade. Alyssa? Farrah Griffin, ever the strategist, recognized the moment for what it was, a pivot point. Angelina, she asked, how do you stay focused on the work despite personal struggles? You remember why you started, Angelina answered. I still locked on Meghan. You remind yourself that your pain, however real, doesn't compare to the suffering of people with no voice, no platform, no resources. You use whatever privilege you have, whatever platform you've been given to serve others, not yourself. Meghan flushed, her poise slipping. So you're saying my pain doesn't matter? That speaking about racism or mental health struggles is selfish? I'm saying that when the subject is humanitarian work, the spotlight belongs on those you claim to serve. Angelina replied. Her voice never wavered. Real service means putting other people's needs above your own narrative. The audience was rapt. This wasn't just a heated exchange, it was a clash of worldviews unfolding live. Whoopi tried again to cool the fire. Ladies, I think we can agree you're both passionate about causes that matter. But Meghan cut in. It's incredibly a privilege to suggest that someone shouldn't talk about their own struggles when those struggles directly affect their ability to help others. My story matters. It shows women, especially women of color, that they don't have to stay silent in the face of injustice. Your story matters, Angelina said, without hesitation, surprising everyone. But so do the stories of the people you claim to help. And in the last 15 minutes, we've heard 15 references to your pain, and barely 2 about theirs. Both of those, by the way, were framed in relation to your own experiences. The precision of the observation stunned the panel. Sarah glanced down at her notes, mentally tallying the count. She gave the faintest nod. The math checked out. That's not fair, Meghan protested, her voice cracking. You're twisting this to make it seem like I don't care, am I? Angelina asked quietly. Because from where I'm sitting, this conversation has been about you, not them. Meghan's defenses faltered. People need context. She insisted. They need to understand what I've overcome to appreciate the work I do now. Do they? Angelina leaned forward. When I make a film about refugees, do I spend the interview explaining how hard it was to get financing? How exhausting the travel was? How tabloids questioned my motives? Or do I talk about the people I met, their courage, and the urgent need for support? The panel didn't need to answer. Everyone knew Angelina had always centered the work, not herself. That's different, Meghan shot back, but her words lacked conviction. You don't understand the unique pressures of being in the royal family. You're right, Angelina conceded. I don't. But I do understand the pressure of being a single mother, raising children while working. In war zones, it's a pressure of having every adoption, every relationship, every parenting decision dissected by tabloids for 20 years. The pressure of being branded unstable, manipulative, insincere. I know that pressure. The studio was utterly still. Even Whoopi hesitated to break the silence. But here's the difference, Angelina continued, her voice steady. I learned early that my struggles, however painful, not the story. When I speak about people who are literally fighting for survival, the story is them. Always them. Meghan's face was crimson now, her composure unraveling under the weight of the rebuke. The tension in the studio was palpable. Meghan's composure, so carefully maintained at the start of the segment, had all but evaporated. So you think? I should just stay silent about institutional racism, about the mental health crisis I endured, she demanded, her voice rising. Angelina didn't flinch. I think, she said, deliberately pausing, that there's a time and place for personal testimony and a time and place for selfless advocacy. True advocates know the difference. The remark drew a low murmur from the audience. Even Joy Behar, normally quick with a retort, hesitated before stepping in. Angelina, that's a strong statement. Are you saying personal experience can't inform advocacy? Not at all. Angelina replied instantly. Personal experience should inform advocacy. But the question is whether you're using your experience to serve others, or using other people's suffering to serve your own narrative. The clarity of her words landed like a hammer. Meghan looked momentarily stunned. I can't believe this, Meghan stammered, her voice unsteady. I came here to talk about social issues, and instead I'm being attacked for sharing my own story. No one's attacking you, Sunny Hostin interjected softly, trying to ease the growing tension. This is just a passionate debate about different approaches, but Angelina wasn't done. She leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but unyielding. Meghan, can you tell us right now, without mentioning your own experience, why people should care about your Netflix documentary? What issues does it address? What communities are being helped? What measurable outcomes do you hope to achieve? The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet. Meghan opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. It's about empowering women to speak their truth in the face of institutional oppression. Which institutions? Angelina pressed. What forms of oppression? What resources are being provided? What specific impact are you making? Each question seemed to shrink Meghan further into her chair. It was becoming clear to everyone in the room that her project centered less on helping others than on retelling her own struggle. I don't think I should have to defend my humanitarian efforts to someone who's minimizing my experiences. Meghan shot back, her tone veering toward petulance. I'm not minimizing them, Angelina said evenly. I'm asking you to distinguish between sharing your experiences to help others and using others' suffering to validate your own. That's the difference between autobiography and advocacy. The line cut through the studio with surgical precision. Even Meghan seemed to recognize she had been outmaneuvered. Alyssa Farah Griffin seized the moment. I think what we're witnessing is an important conversation about the difference between advocacy and autobiography. Exactly, Angelina said, now turning directly to the camera. When we have privilege, platforms, resources, we face a choice. We can use those gifts to amplify voices that would otherwise go unheard. Or we can use other people's struggles to amplify our own. The audience erupted into applause. Meghan sat in stunned silence, realizing too late that every attempt to center her personal story had been quietly but devastatingly dismantled. Whoopi Goldberg, sensing the segment had reached its natural conclusion, stepped in. Well, this has certainly been an enlightening discussion about the responsibilities that come with a public platform. It has, Angelina agreed, then turned to Meghan with a final parting remark that carried both grace and challenge. And I truly hope your documentary succeeds in helping the people it's meant to serve. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. The cameras cut to commercial as the applause swelled. But the ovation was not shared equally. It was for Angelina, who had just delivered a masterclass in grace, under pressure dismantling performative activism without ever raising her voice, in less than 30 minutes. One of Hollywood's most respected humanitarians had exposed the hollow core of self-promotion disguised as advocacy. It was a moment destined to be replayed, analyzed, and remembered as the day authentic service triumphed over manufactured victimhood on live television. So, what do you think? Did Angelina handle this perfectly? Or should she have chosen diplomacy over directness? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes insights into what really happens when the cameras are rolling.